Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for July 22nd, 2024. I'm going to talk today about the chaos that's swirling around the world, including with the US election coming up. The events of the last 10 days to 2 weeks have been just packed with significant developments, not adequate explanation. In fact, most of what you're being told about it is a public relations stunt by one side or another to justify what they're trying to do, and very little attempt to give you an understanding of the dynamic processes underway that are not self-evident. The flurry of events are by themselves dizzying, but then when you add in the commentaries, the op-eds, the analysts who are talking about it, what you get is a potpourri of word salad and an attempt to give you an opinion that fits in with either left or right, gay, straight. It's just, you can see the way the narrative is being shaped by the lies that are told and who's telling them. But let's look at some of these events. Let's start with the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Was this a lone assassin? Was this a result of a conspiracy, a plot? Some people say it was a plot by Trump. Others are talking about the fact that the assassinations are usually the act of the establishment to get rid of someone who's inconvenient. And I think that's the point that we would make, going back to our story of the International Assassination Bureau, which we've made available to many of you. But the other story that's coming out increasingly is that of the Secret Service, the anomalies in their protection, the fact that it didn't work, that they didn't have central coordination, they didn't secure the area, and there's more to it than that. There's a very interesting interview done by Larry Johnson with a former Secret Service officer and trainer in discussing this, and I'd urge you to look for that on the internet. I'm going to put a link to it in the description box, but rather than go through the details, you can get the details from that for yourself. But what's clear is that this assassination attempt was not some arbitrary action, but came out of a context of this activity and these events of the last couple of weeks. This includes the will he or won't he soap opera drama around Joe Biden. Is he going to stay in? Is he going to drop out? Who's going to replace him? This has been designed to prevent people from thinking about the deeper question, which is, given that Biden is clearly not capable of handling the job that he has, who's doing it? Who's making the decisions? And if he's not, why should he stay in office until the inauguration in January 2025? Now, then you have the European election, which most of you probably don't know much about, the re-election of Ursula von der Leyen as the president of the European Council. Now, this came after the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. on July 9th to 11th, where the central topic was war against Russia. And von der Leyen confirmed in her campaign that she intends that Europe will go all out backing Biden in the effort to put Europe at war with Russia. That's where we're headed. The deployment of longer range missiles, of high-speed jets, fighter jets, and so on, the air defense systems, all of this is putting us closer and closer to a NATO war, which means Europe and the United States against Russia. Now, what does it mean if Biden is dropped out of the presidential campaign? What does it mean for Europe? Europe is all in. Europe is the political establishment is committed to this, but the population is not. In the United States and in Europe, the population doesn't want war, especially when the issues in the war have very little to do with the day-to-day lives of people. I can tell you that within Germany, Very few people feel threatened by Putin, except when you get an idiot on the television talking about how Putin's about to overrun Poland or Latvia. In the United States, there's almost no connection to the war in Ukraine, except that the U.S. has spent close to $150 billion so far, maybe $180 billion, for an army that's being decimated in a war that can't be won. In the meantime, what could have been done differently with that money? Why is that not an issue in the campaign, as it should be? Then, of course, when Biden announced his withdrawal from the race yesterday, this throws everything into chaos. Then he went on to say he's going to stay in office until the inauguration. Now, Seymour Hersh wrote a very interesting article where he compared this to Lyndon Johnson, who withdrew from the presidential race on March 31st, 1968, but said he would remain in the office until the next president is sworn in to ensure the U.S. would win the war in Vietnam. And Hersh said that Biden's view that he's going to continue to supervise the war against Russia and Ukraine is just as delusional as Lyndon Johnson's thinking that he could end the war successfully for the United States in Vietnam. Now then you have other aspects to the situation: the continuing war in Ukraine, the continuing slaughter of children in Gaza by the Israeli Defense Forces, the International Court of Justice ruling against the occupation, saying that the occupation of Palestinian territories by Israel is a violation of international law. Well, that should have been obvious, but the fact that the ICJ has now ruled that means what are other countries going to do? Will they continue to support and recognize Israel's right to do this, or will they step in and say it has to stop? And then you have the mission for peace of the Hungarian Prime Minister Orban, who met with Zelensky, he met with Putin, he met with Xi Jinping, and then he met with Trump. And he said that Trump wants to end the war. And Trump is willing to, if he wins in November, not to wait till the inauguration, but jump in right away to try and bring an end to the war. So all of these things make the situation highly unpredictable. The only thing we can predict is it's going to remain unpredictable and dangerous, very dangerous. So what should be done? This is where Helga Zepp-LaRouche came in with a proposal that we establish or organize a council of reason, which includes past elected officials, senior officials from military, intelligence, business, people across the board who have some experience in this and some standing, who would have the courage to speak out against the direction that the establishment is taking us, that would step up in front of the stampede toward World War III and say, no, you must stop this. And that's the idea that she put forward. And her proposal is that you, the viewers, put forward your suggestion of people who should serve in such a capacity, in such a council. Who do you know that are elected officials, that are prominent people, spokespeople, who have the courage to step forward and stand up and speak out for the majority? Because it's clear the majority of the world is against what's the direction it's going. The global South is not backing the war, the NATO war in Ukraine, or the Israeli occupation and attack on Gaza. The majority of the global South is saying we want a total end to colonialism, whether you call it neo-colonialism or free trade. We want it to stop. We want a right to develop, to have our own sovereign nations develop for our population. The political establishment in the United States and Northern Europe, Western Europe, is committed to a permanent war policy. And with that, a monetary policy. So you have militarization and financialization. Who benefits from that? The billionaires of the donor class of the establishment, not you, not the average person. So, and how do they protect it? With a surveillance state and censorship. Now, our responsibility then is to break their control over the information that you get. and begin a legitimate debate about what's in the legitimate interests of security for all nations, including an economic development policy that will realize that. That's what the Schiller Institute is fighting for. That's what Mrs. LaRouche is proposing, that we find the people who will stand up and fight for that. And I'm asking you to join us. Send us your suggestions. Who should be brought into this Council of Reason, which, for the sake of all of us, should be impaneled as soon as possible.